Feels good to be back.
Leaving me lone wolf in this. Nice, we can hear you clear.
Sweet.
Yeah, Aaron, I believe that you're right in that. A lot of companies have been killed off. I think that whole initial coin offering phase that was a little scary. A lot of companies were just throwing ICOs out there for no particular reason. I think probably in years past, people were trying to make blockchain fit into whatever they could make it fit into. Where now it's like, all right, where does blockchain actually make a impactful difference? So you will get less companies out there, but hopefully the ones that do emerge out will be a little bit more substantial. Charles, you there? Charles, you there? Still debugging? All right. Well then, Zach, what's your experiences with event storming? Just while we wait for Charles.
Yeah, I mean, I've done event storming on two teams so far since I've been a software engineer. I think it's a pretty interesting way to build a ubiquitous language. So I think a lot of the times it's hard to get your business side and your development side on the same track in terms of what you're building, what you're wanting to build, and what processes need to happen. It's a good way just to track down those business processes. A lot of the time, I think developers or engineering teams will just go ahead and make the assumption on what the business needs and just start working off that, off of like a minimal document, whereas DDD really tracks out like this is the exact process step by step. This is exactly what this actor does in this process, and getting that information in before you start building on the product. It's awesome.
Yeah. I liked what Charles said last session. Ideas and sticky notes are cheap, code is expensive. So if you can get things ahead of time, you're saving yourself a lot of time.
No, I agree. I think that's the last 2 years or so, Aaron. Well, actually, no. There's someone at
Are
2013.
you serious? It's the last 2 years?
Okay, so probably 2013, 2020. So there's like 7 years there. Never mind. Charles, I can't hear you yet.
Can't hear you.
Most of the badges are from 2018 to 2020.
We can see your screen and video. Your screen and video are clear. Oh, I don't have anything, Charles. I swear Charles is a developer.
He uses like the most niche distros of Linux I've ever heard of. I think he's on like Pop OS right now.
Yvonne, so yeah, what he'll be doing is he'll be showing the Miro on here, but you're more than welcome to actually hop into the Miro board and contribute that way. I think it's more just for the people who want to just take a peek and see what's going on. They can watch it here, but if you really want to dive in deeper and you really want to participate, the Miro board is where you can do that.
Sweet. Charles, I can hear you.
All right. Awesome.
Yo, Charles.
Awesome. Sorry, folks. I had to disconnect my dock. Murphy's Law kicked. I'll try to speed through the event storming, at least showcase it, and hopefully y'all can explore it at a later time, and y'all can do it with y'all's teams just to see. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay, let me know if you guys can see it.
Yes, we can see
Okay,
it.
awesome.
And we should have some people on there.
Yeah, no, I've definitely noticed. So I'll try to give a quick introduction. I'll try to speed through it and show some of the key points about it. So event storming is a facilitation practice where you the core objective is to, as a first step, define all your domain events. So everything that can happen and that will happen within your event. So essentially, step one is to, in chronological order, put them in order. Sometimes they can happen in parallel, and we can show you how that'll look like in a hot minute. But that's essentially step one. And it's a pretty good way to make sure that everyone's on the same page about the process that you're trying to build, because there's no like, oh, what will happen if the user wants to do this? No, step one is saying like the things that will happen, and then we can figure out what can cause those things to happen, and that'll be step two. So the explore phase. So you kind of add other details like what are the commands that cause the events to happen. What are the objects associated? Is it an external system that causes the event to happen? Who are the actors? What are the policies? User interface? Any hot topics or issues about any questions that anybody brings up. So we'll go ahead and be showcasing that. And then the last phase is the closing phase, where you organize and refine the information. One thing I mentioned in the previous talk was making sure that you extract your models and you share them with all the participants. You essentially do this here, that step here, and distill them potentially into epics, and you can put them into a discovery Kanban flow and get them refined, and hopefully in a soon enough point, you can get that ready for the delivery team to execute on. So if I were to kind of showcase the expectations of a particular workshop, this would be the end result. Usually it's very, I would say, very fruitful in in-person meetings, but due to the state of the world and how things are going, we have to do these in a virtual environment. The plus side on that, though, is that we get to have that captured, so you don't have to transfer this knowledge from a physical sticky board sheet to a digital format. It's already in a digital format. But essentially, this is the expectation. Usually within 2 hours to 3 hours worth of collaborating and working, you kind of have to make sure that you pace, as a facilitator, you pace your team through these kind of planning sessions. And this should be what's kind of the end result. You have a big board with a lot of stickies, a lot of notes, and you guys draw lines around what's known as bounded context. Again, that's something that I'll leave it up to y'all to look into. I'll add a little note, and you're kind of slicing the concerns of your domains. And here's another example of how that might look. Some products are so involved and they do this over the span of 2 days, is that they have this piece of paper that wraps around the entirety of the meeting room, and it's to be a giant meeting room, and it's kind of big. It's kind of a big exploratory and really fun exercise. A lot of people like going up to the board and writing sticky notes. You get a lot of engagement. This is the primary method of engagement in this exercise. Them writing the domains, them writing notes, having little conversations here and there, kind of get clarification. You're consolidating sticky notes. You're expanding sticky notes. It's less emphasis on so much process, but more it's just opening a lot of doors for collaboration. To showcase that, I will go ahead and, as a facilitator, step one is you just slap a sticky note in the middle of the board, and you start with some sort of thing that happens within the system. And it can be in the middle, it can be in the beginning, it can be the end. I would recommend you just state something that happens in the middle, and then you expand out and say okay, what happens before this particular event? What happens after this particular event? And what tends to happen is that because it's exploratory and you're kind of feeling things out, and then you kind of find out oh, this notification needs to be set here. It's oh, what about this policy? We have a legal requirement here. And that's one of the more important reasons why you want to have your domain experts or different types of people in this particular practice, because they will think of different things. Like an event will happen, and then they're like, oh no, like we need this. So I'll start it off. I will go down to the board right here. There's actually already an event sticky note. I will put an event, and totally winging this right now. This is usually how facilitation will happen anyway, so you guys are getting the true raw deal. We will say rider, I'll say passenger was picked up. Oh, there might be a better way to phrase this. I'll change it. I'll do ride requested. So the next step is for you to like copy and paste the sticky note, and then you have to figure out, okay, what happens after the ride is requested, or what happens before the ride is requested. You don't necessarily have to think. You can keep in the back of your mind, who does what's the thing that causes it. But essentially, we just want to focus on saying like what will happen next or what will happen before. So if I were to do another one, and again, this is something that it's a snowball effect. The moment you kind of have to like egg your team on and get them to see that like, okay, this is how I want to do this, and then they get engaged in the board, and then you start seeing it's kind of like exponential. One sticky turns into two turns into four, and so on and so forth. And then obviously you hit a critical mass, and you kind of want to stop and make sure that, okay, let's stop and let's think about it. So ride requested. So say user logged in. At some point the user logged in order to ride to request the ride. Downloaded. So this is like from beginning to end, like the entire process. So I've downloaded, user logged in. Yeah, user bought a phone. maybe they can't have a phone. Maybe that's worth the discussion. And then you just have it on a computer or do something else. Maybe it's a traditional taxi and you just wave that hand. That's essentially what you're trying to do. Like, not all the domain events are something that you're going to map into software. This is something that you want to know so you can understand where the source of these interactions come from. So the user logged in, and maybe something that would be a requirement is that for whatever reason this business model requires that it's like, oh, users shouldn't need to log in right away to request a ride. Like maybe they can request a ride and then log in afterwards, right? Maybe that's a requirement, and then that's something you specify. So you can say user logged in after they requested. So stuff like that. And it's up to the domain experts. So feel free to throw some curveballs where you guys feel that things should happen. So requested, so ride got accepted. So usually also you kind of want to, if you have like an affirmative event, you kind of also want to. There's most likely also a failure case. So like ride declined, right? And then what happens when the ride declines?
So Yvonne mentioning promo code.
Oh, promo code? Yeah, there's we can have a promo code presented, right?
Yeah. Code valid.
Yeah, that kind of chain into many different things. Promo code. That's more of a state, so you can have like promo code expired is probably where you can derive that from. So stuff like that. So ride declined. It could be there could be a state where ride was not found. Maybe there's no drivers. Or maybe, we should probably just call it out, driver not found. You can have, as
This
per.
is open to everyone as well. So if you have ideas or if you have things that you would want to see, throw it in there.
Right. And again, the premise is, yeah, we're just recreating Uber, and this is just an exploratory way of recreating and like analyzing the process, and we can make assumptions. And it's just that I assume people are familiar with ride sharing, and it's interesting enough to put onto a board. So again, feel free to, like, if you guys feel like, maybe a ride needs to be rated, right? A passenger cried. Maybe that's a worthwhile. Like, how do we? It's a little. It's good to have a lot of empathy. It's a little bit. There's humorous to put that on a sticky note. However, that does bring up like a topic like, hey, like, how do we handle like bad experiences, like passenger reported bad experience. Right? Is there a business process for that? Do we send them a promo code afterwards? Like, oh, I'm so sorry, right? Like, we do want to keep your business here. Next ride is 15% off or something like that. A good chunk of
in the chat, would wait time be one?
A wait time? So like a duration has happened. I would say so. Yeah. So like if something expired or something timed out. Or like, let's say part of the process you're required to wait for a set amount of time. Like you can say like set amount of time passed, right? And yeah, you can have triggers for, and this is something you can talk about. Like it's a policy. So like if I were to skip, like I'll let y'all keep on adding events. But if I were to go back to the little legend, you can have a policy, right? That's kind of like you can think of it as a cron job. Right, so like, or like a kind of external system or whatever. So you have a policy that like, after a set amount of time, I need to double check if X amount happened, and then you issue a command. The command does its thing. You like look stuff up and omit an event, like saying, "Oh, it did in fact expire," or it didn't. Right. So that's typically how you would go about that. Again, this is just a representation and conversation, so feel free to, there's no hard and fast rules about event storming. It's just the basic concept of events. You have things that you can map it to, so commands, and you can have like a subset. You don't have to do everything all at once. But it's just, if you feel like you need to note that down and that's important, just add a sticky note. You can make your own kind of sticky notes. Like you can have a sticky note just for like you have like a hot topic note. So that's typically something that like our team that uses. We have a hot topic. So like if there is some discourse or there's some process that we're unsure of and there's a lot of opinions about it, we will mark it with the red note, and then we will make sure that if we feel like we're missing anybody in the conversation, right, we'll call them out in that sticky note, and then we'll go back to them so that way we can make sure that it's like, okay, like the decision was made. This is the following. Like we followed up, like with our customer, our stakeholder. We had this assumption, but it was actually wrong because we had the wrong amount of data. So we went back and we reassessed. That you can add all these different types of sticky notes to this kind of experience, and it's pretty simple.
Hey, Charles, you mentioned there was
Go for it.
Yeah, you mentioned that there was a lot of different, types of individuals in this room when this is happening. So you have your developers, you have your designers, you have your business, or your experts, your domain experts, right? And so are they playing any different role while throwing up stickies, or they're all kind of in that same, just throw up any kind of ideas up there?
Yeah, you can throw any kind of ideas out there. I think so. One thing that will happen.
You don't have to stick to your you don't have to stick to your domain in terms of like design or development or
right. So in general, you will have like some sort of goal, and it's just like if the goal is like you're trying to explore your business, you're trying to explore like there's usually two use cases when you do event storming. You're trying to rediscover your business process, and you're trying to map it out and get everyone on the same page. And then you want to extend it or refine it or optimize it, right? This is one way to do it. So you just map out all the things that happen and the things that cause those things to happen and all the relationships. The next thing is whenever, like, let's say you're building an evergreen product, you need to explore all these different things, then yeah, you can throw like all sorts of different concepts. Like for example, someone in marketing would have thought of something else like, hey, I've seen this work successful in the past. People tend to like this feature. Like that person may not always be, at the forefront with research per se. But they do fulfill kind of like the similar. They're kind of face to face with the customer as equally as the designer would be doing that research with customers. So they will have valuable insights, and it'll be something worth pursuing. It can spawn off other conversation. It's facilitated groupthink. Groupthink tends to have a pretty bad rap, or kind of rightfully so sometimes, because a lot of people bounce ideas, and if it becomes chaotic really easily. However, groupthink is very powerful if you're able to facilitate it, and that's one of the most important things. If you're going to be having this kind of workshop, is making sure that you know how to facilitate it. Maybe keep people on track. Make sure you keep track of time, which I have not been doing. So hopefully that kind of answers that question, and you kind of branched out into a kind of a pseudo rant. So I'm just kind of looking. So ride started, ride completed, tip accepted, passenger threw up, passive was aggressive, all these different things. Oh man, driver had no water, passenger, okay. Fantastic. Okay, so let's go to the next step really quick. I think
license.
Yeah, driver needs a driver's license. Maybe the driver needs to fulfill some sort of criteria. Maybe like in our use case, they need to pass a certain test, right? So driver needed to be onboarded, all these different things. Let's say rider app onboarded or rider app downloaded, and then that can branch off to other things. Again, because it's only very few of us, like the less people you have, the longer it'll take. So again, people can like the more people you invite, the faster this kind of exercise goes. But the expectation would be like in the hours, not in the minutes. So it's very methodical. There's discussion and whatnot. But I'm going to go ahead and start introducing. Go for it.
So, yeah, this process it takes hours. But how many development does it save on the back end?
Oh, a phenomenal amount. So typically a product, whenever developing like a tech product, right, for MVP, it takes like 3 to 4 months, right? And 2 to 4 weeks is like the ideal state is like requirements gathering, especially if it's evergreen. We need to make sure that we know what we're building. Otherwise, you start building something, you spend like 1,000 man hours developing, a particular minimal viable product, and it's nothing that the client wanted, right? Just because we didn't get to communicate what we needed. Also, it's really important because we'll tend to like work on things sometimes that are not 100% aligned. We're spending too much effort on a particular feature, which is not necessarily like delivering the most value to the our business. So this exercise will make sure that we focus on the core domain, and that we kind of like implement the things that are kind of needed, because not all these events need to be implemented, all these interactions need to be implemented right from the get-go, but you at least call out like, hey, like at least this needs to happen, this needs to happen, this needs to happen in order to be a viable product to launch, and then we can add all these features later. So I would say like I'm forgetting the rule of thumb. There's so many rule of thumbs with that, but it's like for like it's just more expensive. Probably the best way I can talk about it is just like money wise. Like if you spend like you're paying your developers a lot of money, and they have to rewrite everything just because requirements were set correctly or whatever. You're spending a lot of time. You're spending a lot of money, and it's a loss for your business. And if you're able to get as close as right as possible, like nothing's perfect, right? But if you're able to make your domain small enough and iterable, and the whole agile thing, you'll have a higher probability of success. It's essentially a probability game. Yeah. So the next thing that you typically do, and then again, I'll add notes to this. I do feel like with the technical issues at the beginning of the workshop, I kind of got shortchanged. But essentially, you kind of want to map your commands to the events. And usually an event is like a noun-verb relationship in the past tense. So like app downloaded, passenger logged in, right? So it's in the past tense. A command is sort of like a verb-noun relationship. So you kind of like flip the script on what it is. It's like a present tense, kind of like it's a command. You verb first. So it's a little bit trivial, right? But the app is downloaded, the only way you can really download the app, have the app downloaded is if you download the app, right? It can be as simple as that. But sometimes, if you're familiar with entity relationships and whatnot, you can have one-to-many, many-to-one relationships between commands and events. You can have one command that can kick off 5 events, or you can have 5 commands that kick off a particular event. So, if a user logged in, or log in, passenger logged in, and if the passenger logged in, let's say if they log in, we always show them the latest promo code, then that would be like an event. It's just presented. After they log in, we always make sure the promo code is presented. Or you can expand that out, make it into a policy, guaranteed, after, let's grab that purple sticky note. It's probably better to do it this way too, because it's a little bit more explicit, but it's up to y'all on how y'all want to organize your board. But you have a policy where make sure to present latest policy or latest promo. And then promo code is presented. And let's say there's another policy. Or let's actually expand this. So you have present latest promo code. That's the command that the policy invokes, and then the command emits this particular event, promo code presented. There could be that no promo presented, and that could mean there was no promotion at the time. There's nothing there. So you have a policy. You always want to make sure there's the latest one. However, there might be a use case where it wasn't. So you kind of have this kind of branching structure. And I think one thing to also call out is that we're not drawing lines, at least not yet. Sticky notes, typically, if you're thinking of it in a physical sense, you can put them on the wall, you can move them. They're very ephemeral. You can delete them. You should be able to do the same here. You want to move stuff around. You want to reorganize. I'm going to click and drag.
Charles, as a team, do we want to have 2 separate applications, you think? One for the rider, one for the driver? Or should we just have one for both?
It depends. If the context is typically the way to identify this is that if there's enough concepts between the different the 2 different ones, and this is what's known as a bounded context, then it might be worthwhile, right? Having 2 different apps, 2 different applications might be worth, and that's something that Uber has done, Postmates, all sorts of other delivery, ride sharing, gig work kind of applications. So I would say it would be a different, and then that's something you can call out, right? Download app downloaded and a rider app downloaded versus a driver app downloaded. So we're calling it out, and that's just something that we've established as ubiquitous in language. It's hey, there's this concept of a driver app, and that is what all drivers interact with. There's a idea of a promo, and this is what a promo means, right? Yes, you have a generic understanding what a promo is, but to everyone else, everyone has their own different interpretation of a promo, right? And this is kind of a trivial example, but for example, a more nebulous concept is what is a ride, right? Like what defines a ride? At what point is a ride happening? Does it happen the moment the person gets picked up? Is it the moment that it's requested? All these different things, and that's something that we can talk about. So yeah, you go through, you kind of like map the commands to the events, and then one thing that the next step after that is that you will define who does the commands. So you have your actors. So this is when you kind of get into like the roles that people have. So you can maybe have an administrator. You can have a driver. You can have a writer. And let's say our service is really unique. We always include an entertainer in all our drives, right? Like there's a driver and then there's an entertainer in the passenger side, like playing guitar or something. Like just entertaining the rider.
Stand-up comedian.
Yeah, stand-up comedian. Joe Rogan is in your car, right? So you're listening to, or he's hosting a podcast right there and then, and you're included in it. So just something unique, right? And then so we have, the idea of a podcaster. Well, my computer screen kind of blew up.
Do you want me to screen share?
Do you guys still see my screen?
It dropped.
No, we can't.
Okay, hold on.
Also, don't forget payment process.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, and then again, your role as a facilitator is like, yes, you kind of have a stake into how the board lays out, but you're trying to just get the domain experts, and you're trying to guide them to put more stuff down. So this is something that like a domain expert who cares about the payment processing, who cares about confirming that yes, everything's good to go in regards to, it's like they have the AOK they purchased the service, they get everything, we fulfilled it, that's something that they can put down. I'm trying to share my screen again. Sorry. Yeah, you just have you have the role of Joe Rogan just in your app. So yeah, there's payment and whatnot, and then
also time check. We got.
Oh, okay. Thank you for that time check. So as you, I now provide some more documentation. The same I mentioned in the previous talk that there is a resource on GitHub called Awesome DDD. It has a link to another one called Awesome Event Storming. So if you want to learn more, YouTube's actually a really good way. There's, I think the most interesting ones are the time-lapse ones, where over the span of 2 days, they go from 0 stickies to an obscene amount. The ideas of that they, an idea is really cheap, and they tend to discard them a lot. So let's say you have an idea about Joe Rogan or like a podcaster, but maybe it's not feasible. Maybe that's not going to bring value. You can just throw that idea away. No harm, no foul. So I'll try to post something on the Slack channel for that. I'll try to give some time back to everybody involved here. But let me try to answer any questions. I don't think I was able to look at the chat well.
One thing that really helped me with effectivity was thinking about it more as a board game than kind of just a business meeting that you're having to attend. It's very board gamey. Like there's 8 or so rules you have to follow. There's rounds included. You're working as a team to complete the rounds and like get to like answer like win or lose the game. So I mean, I think that kind of helps like because it is an 8-hour session, so it really helps like get through the time and understand like okay, like we're working together on this. We're in round 1. Now we're in round 2. Now we're in round 3.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's like the gamification of meetings, and that's what any good facilitator can do. You establish rules. You have that workshop. Like workshops are fun. When you think of, for example, I would host like robotic workshops. It's a lot of fun. Like just hearing about these kind of things is a little boring. But when you actually get to do stuff, people tend to be engaged. You have different types of people too. You have like people who are introverted or a little bit shy. Like I know myself, I'm very outgoing and I'm very boisterous, and I'll state my opinions. But as a facilitator, you need to be cognizant of all types of people, and workshops tend to be a good format to get everybody involved. A lot of people who are quiet. You have quiet developers, quiet designers, all sorts of people, and everyone has pretty good ideas. Like the people you interact with, like you hold yourself, like if you hold yourself highly, you tend to be surrounded by people who also are pretty talented, and you're part of a team, right? And you're working together, and it's a big. What's up?
So if you're the facilitator and you do have a group of very quiet or shy developers, what would you do to try and get them to speak up or throw stickies up there?
Right. So one of the more kind of important points, and this is kind of like in a physical setting, is that everyone's required to stand up and everyone's required to be at the wall. No one's sitting down. No one's, everyone has a Sharpie and a set of sticky notes in their hand at all times. Right. So they're going to be, it's like, again, you're increasing the probability that they're going to engage. Like if they're standing, they're not going to just be standing there doing nothing. They're going to want to move, because standing still is not going to be good. You can also do round robin. Like as a facilitator, like if you notice someone being quiet, you can say, hey, what do you think of this? Like, I know that you are particularly involved in this particular domain. Maybe the person's tired, maybe they need a break. That's fine. It's a very laborious, it's not easy. And your job as facilitators to make sure that everyone is in a good place. It's a safe space, and they are, not butting heads. Right. So, have snacks, snacks are a good way to do that. But again, virtual is a little bit different. It's still pretty new. Before this particular talk, I did double check with a blog post that was recently released about virtual event storming, and yeah, it's a problem space that people are still trying to figure out. Virtual collaborations always, it's called collaboration poverty, right? Like you tend to lose out on a lot of different things. So it's something that we all need to figure out together. But just be cognizant. Just remember we're all human, and usually you'll get engagement if it's fun, if it's something that they're invested in, they'll be engaged.
I think humor is good too.
Question in the chat.
Yeah.
Okay. Do people in the workshops have to do their homework before attending the workshop? No, not necessarily. So, whenever, let's say, it depends on your role, right? If you're an architect and you're a facilitator, yes, you kind of want to do a little bit of homework, only to poke and prod people who know the domain, right? Your main thing that you want to do is get the domain experts to put their ideas down first, right? And then your designers and your developers can point out hey, if we change the process this way, because the way that you're presenting it there's a potential for technical complexity or whatnot. It's oh no, this is probably you could probably optimize this flow this way. Does this work with you? And then you can say yay or nay and whatnot. Let me try to read the second part of this. Does the facilitator or someone else give them boundaries or kind of requirements for the design before this process? So, yeah, so it's not necessarily you want to give them homework again, but whenever you do set up that meeting, give them expectations. Set up the expectations, give them an agenda, right? And that's all they probably need. All they need is an agenda, and they know when breaks are happening. They know when the purpose of the meeting, what is the scope? Is it a discovery phase? Is it just are we trying to rediscover an existing process? You can call out, again, this is a conversation that everyone will have, is how far is too far? Because if you don't set limits, you are going to go into, and let's say you do it in the span of 3 days, this board is going to explode and it's going to be a little bit too much. So, there's no hard and fast answer. The best thing is that, again, they don't need to do too much homework. Just give them an agenda, and then you just have conversations, and everyone can figure that out. Are we at time? Is it 12:15, right?
Yeah. So we are at time, and so thank you, Charles. Thank you, Zach. I love event storming when y'all facilitate. Again, it is a lot different when it is in person versus virtual. Did a fantastic job. Next up, we do have Building Your Startup Software, the Tech and the Talent, by our coding track sponsor, Code Up. That will be on the next session. So head over to the track sessions tab on the left-hand side. Click that, and we will very soon. But again, thanks, Charles. That was lovely. Thank you, everybody, for the questions. And yeah, we'll see you on the next one.
All right, awesome. Thank you, everyone, for attending.
Charles,
Awesome.
thanks, Gila. This is awesome.
Thanks, Gila. All right, bye.
Bye.